And for the final week, the substance view runs deeper than most people realize when they first encounter it, because it isn't just a philosophical position somebody chose. It's baked into the structure of Western language and thought in a way that makes it feel like common sense. Plato laid the foundation by arguing that what's most real is what doesn't change. The eternal forms, perfect and unchanging, were more real than the physical world that is merely copied them imperfectly. The things we see and touch are always becoming and perishing, as he put in Timaeus, and never really are. That move, treating being as superior to becoming, set the trajectory for most of what followed. Descartes inherited it and pushed it further by defining substances as things that exist independently of everything else, needing no other thing in order to exist. The wax example from chapter 5 is the clearest illustration. The wax changes its shape, color, smell, and texture when melted, but Descartes says the substance, the wax itself, endures unchanged beneath all those shifting qualities. Strip away every predicate and something else still remains. That remainder is what substances are. Whitehead's critique is that when you actually try to find that remainder, there's nothing there. Mesley makes this point precisely in chapter 5 using the pencil. Remove the color, the length, the graphite, the wood, every quality the pencil has, and you don't find some hidden core of pencilness sitting underneath. You find nothing. The substance was never a real thing independent of its qualities. It was a grammatical habit. The subject of the sentence, the pencil, stays fixed while the predicates change, and we mistook the structure of language for the structure of reality. Whitehead quotes John Stuart Mill's observation that some thinkers thought they could become acquainted with facts simply by determining the meaning of words. And that's exactly what happened. The noun-predicate structure of Western grammar generated an entire metaphysics of enduring substances. And that metaphysics then shaped how people understood the idea of God, the self, causation, and value across 2,000 years of philosophy. What Whitehead proposes instead doesn't have a tidy, everyday equivalent because it requires genuinely rethinking what a thing is. Creativity, as he defines it in chapter 9, is the universal of universals, the principle by which the many become one actual occasion and are increased by one. It isn't a thing in the world. It isn't behind the world pulling levers. It's just the fundamental fact that things become and perish, that every moment of existence is a novel event that has never happened before and will never happen again. Every actual entity, every drop of experience, comes into being by taking in the entire inherited past, the whole world of preceding occasions, and responding to it creatively. That response is always unique. The entity actualizes itself out of what it received, guided by what Whitehead calls the initial aim, the best possibility available given the situation, and shaped by its own subjective aim, the way it chooses to respond. Then it perishes as a subject and becomes part of the past that the next moment inherits. The many become one and are increased by one, and the process continues without end. The difference between this and a substance is total. A substance persists through change by remaining the same underneath it. An actual entity doesn't persist at all. It comes into being, achieves its moment of experience, and perishes. What looks like persistence, what we call a person or a rock or an electron moving through time, is what Whitehead calls a society, a sequence of actual occasions that share a common pattern and inherit it from one another. The self isn't a thing that endures. It's a flow, a cumulative series of events that carries its history forward without any hidden, unchanging core holding it together. Hume got close to this when he said the self is nothing but a bundle of perceptions in perpetual flux. Whitehead agrees, but adds the mechanism. Each occasion actively prehends the past, takes it in and responds, rather than just passively receiving it. The question of which view better accounts for what a person actually is doesn't feel genuinely open once you sit with both of them seriously. The substance view requires something to exist independently of everything else and to endure unchanged through the change of its qualities. But nothing in lived experience points to that. Every memory changes with time. Every emotional response arises out of what happened before it. The person who existed 10 years ago shared a biographical chain with the person existing now, but wasn't the same in any static sense. Massive changes, trauma, brain damage, profound experience create people who say they no longer recognize themselves. And the substance view has no real account of that except to call it accidental variation of an unchanged core. That's not honest to what actually happens. And I know that more than anyone. The process view fits better because it treats identity as something that has to be actively maintained and recreated rather than passively preserved. The subjective aim, the way each new occasion responds to what is inherited, is where genuine freedom lives. That's also where responsibility lives, which Whitehead says in Chapter 9 is grounded in the experience of self-creativity. The difficulty the process view has to face, honestly, is the combination problem. How all these momentary occasions of experience add up to a unified self that persists through time, makes long-term commitments, and carries the weight of its own history. Whitehead's answer involves the concept of societies and the way dominant occasions in complex organisms integrate the experience of the whole. But it's a more technically demanding answer than the substance view requires. And it doesn't fully dissolve the puzzle of what makes this moment experience feel continuous with the one from 20 years ago. That difficulty is real, but it isn't a reason to retreat to substance view. Because the substance view doesn't actually solve the continuity problem either. It just gives it a name, saying there's an enduring substance underneath the changes that doesn't explain what the substance is, how it relates to the qualities that express it, or why it feels anything at all. Whitehead accounts at least traces the actual mechanism by which the past gets taken up into the present, which through prehension, though the felt inheritance of what came before. The self is the cumulative flow of that process, and that's a more honest account of the experience actually like than the idea of an unchanging core sitting beneath it all untouched and unexplained.